This is Snorlax318.
And this is Dark Harvest Studios.
And today we're going to review our first game, Monster Rancher DS. After the Monster Rancher series has gone to a long hiatus, we get Monster Rancher DS, which turns out to be kind of an okay game.
It has its ups and it has its downs, and we're here to talk about that today on DJ TOONS Gamers Reviews.
We hope you enjoy our first review, so let's stop talking and get on talking with this review. This is Monster Rancher DS for the Nintendo DS, obviously.
Now, the story...
Well, kind of like this. You become a monster breeder and some lady becomes your partner. You start by making your first monster, and you can be anyone. But the main problem is that you can only keep one monster on the field. The rest you have to freeze.
And another problem is that most monsters are barely unlockable until you've done a whole bunch of other missions on the process. When, unlike in Monster Rancher 4, you could summon monsters at will with any kind of disc you had.
Standard out like all the Monster Rancher titles.
With only one problem. The game seems to cheat itself by making every single attack a single dodge. So it's very hard to stick a landing on your opponent when you're attacking.
And the fact is that your monster can die in the series, so you have to keep an eye on its stats. So that means you do have to feed it and train it well if you want to succeed in tournaments.
But like always, it's never been different from the original Monster Rancher, but it is like most of the other Monster Rancher series, which it pretty much has the same technique.
So what was your favorite monster, Dark Harvest?
Well, there were a lot of monsters in the game that I was sad they took out, like Zoom and Zan from the Monster Rancher 4 series. A lot of other characters were taken out that were mostly main characters, but the character that was my favorite that they kept in the game was Dragon. But let's talk about the stages. The game has a very big problem with stages. Once, if you don't enter the Dragon Cup, you cannot get dragons at all in the game. And the problem with that is that when you enter rank SS, you can't go back to the last rank. You have to stay at the rank you are, and you can't go back to get an award.
True.
So really, if you don't get it right then on your calendar, you're pretty much screwed when it comes to getting a dragon.
And anyways, this is actually the second Monster Rancher game made for the DS. And this is the first to come to the US. The other one was only released in Japan.
For any reasons pretty much unknown.
So this is actually Monster Rancher DS2, as they call it in Japan. But we call it Monster Rancher DS in the US.
Which kind of makes us wonder, could the first Monster Rancher DS have been worse?
Maybe they couldn't translate it. Some games don't make it, like Mother Free and Mother and... well, you name it. Some Japanese games just don't make it to the US.
Now let's talk about design. The game sticks pretty loyal to the design of most of the monsters, and it still uses the text for speaking. Of course, what DS game doesn't have speaking besides Professor Layton and others?
Exactly.
But the part that makes it most interesting is the map layout. Most of the monster combinations are totally destroyed because of the two new added monsters, Anubis and Falco. Because the combinations in the game are awfully strange. Combining a Duckin with a Falco should give you a Duckin that looks like a bird, but instead gives you something called the King Tut Duck, which you should have gotten from Anubis, but instead get from Falco. That doesn't make any sense at all in my word.
Now let's talk about replayability. When we first got this game, we did enjoy it, but when we replayed it, we kinda didn't sense any fun back then.
Especially with the big repetitiveness of losing and your monster dying.
I mean, there is quests you can do after you beat the game, but there aren't that many monsters in the game.
Especially with the fact that when you restart a profile, you have to be careful with your ranch size, because only every October can you increase the size of the ranch, meaning, and unlike Monster Rancher's other series, you didn't need a bigger stable to get a bigger monster, only more monsters. But in this game, because you can't get more monsters, you need to make a bigger stable to get even a Lesion, which you could always get in Monster Rancher 4 and over.
Okay, so down for our conclusion, since this is our first review, let's talk about how we rate this game.
We rate them by either buying the game, seeing if it's very good and worth keeping, by renting it, which means, worth playing, but then putting back to the store,
Or skipping, which you don't buy the game and say, screw this, I'm going on to the next game.
Yeah.
So Dark Harvest, will you buy, rent, or skip this game?
With this game being another Monster Rancher game, and it's very rare in America ever since the last game was in 2006, I would say for loyal Monster Rancher fans, I'd say buy, but for someone who's just looking for a neat game to play in the passing times, I'd say rent.
So which one in your opinion?
My opinion, the best one to do is rent. It's a fun game, but it's not a fun game if you don't know what you're doing.
I'm going to have to agree with you on that because I sense no replayability at all. I mean, Pokemon does have good replayability, but this one I didn't kind of sense replaying it. So I think it is worth a rent. So overall, our score is renting the game. Rent Monster Rancher DS now. So please, join us next time as we review Team Fortress 2 for the PC and Mac, only on DJ Toons Gamers.
See you later.
I'm going on to the next game.
Yeah.